In this knife talk video, I'm going to be talking about the Rough Rider Medium Congress in Black Cherry Bone, and also in general Congress knives. So to start out here, we have this knife. It's a Rough Rider, which is a brand owned by Smoky Mountain Knife Works. I have videos on other knives from Rough Rider, and I'm going to be making a video on Rough Rider in general. So I'm not going to focus on the brand, but more so on the knife. So the Congress pattern is generally this shape. So it's kind of a convex up at the belly or the center of the handle, and they can have rounded ends, they can have square ends, they can have long elongated bolsters, so they're almost like a Barlow if it wasn't a two-ended knife or a multi-blade knife. So it's basically this shape of the handle. But a traditional Congress is a two-spring knife with 4 blades, 2 main blades and 2 secondary blades with a main blade and a secondary on each spring. So I had already had this Congress, which is the Great Eastern Cutlery Tidiute number 13 Clerk, aka office knife. And it's an interesting knife. It's one that I got a little while back. I've used it and carried it, and I ended up getting some blade wrap in it, and I had to sharpen it a lot to get the blade wrap out. So I don't know if you've seen this knife before I had to sharpen a lot, or if you've seen another GEC 13, you can see that this blade has been sharpened down quite a bit. Lost a lot of material off of this blade. But it is sharp now. It doesn't have blade wrap, which was a heck of a fight to get it that way, but it's usable. But this is a half Congress pattern. So why is it a half Congress? Well, it has 1 spring and 2 blades, one being a main blade, one being a secondary. So it's basically just half of a full Congress, which is what this Rough Rider is. Interesting knife, and one that I've used, I've enjoyed and stuff. But I wanted to check out a full Congress because kind of interested me for a couple reasons. One, it's just kind of outside of something that I have. It's kind of unusual in the fact that I don't really understand the shape of the handle for being a 4-bladed knife. It seems to facilitate the tips becoming proud of the handle quicker than other handle shapes, or even if it was the opposite, so if the blades were coming out of this side. So I never really understood it, but it's a pattern that's really popular. It's a pattern that's popular with collectors. It's a pattern that you see a lot in older catalogs of knives. There's some, collections from, shipwrecks and things like that have a lot of Congress patterns. And also, Abraham Lincoln was carrying a Congress knife when he was assassinated. So it's one that has a lot of historical worth to it, in the sense that people definitely carried Congress patterns quite a bit. So I wanted to check it out. Now, one thing, I really don't like proud tips on a knife. It's one of the things that I'm probably more sensitive about than most. So I wanted to see, how Rough Rider did it. Thought about getting a case Congress, but I decided I didn't want to spend $50 or $60 or $40, however much it was, on one if I wasn't going to like it. So rather, this was about $14. And it's pretty well made, especially for that price. There are some small gaps on the back springs, as you can see there, but nothing too bad. None of the blades have any blade play, and they all have pretty good action. So to start out here, one kind of thing that's a little bit strange to me, it seems like this is the way the knife is supposed to be presented, that this would be the mark side, because it's marked on this side with the R, whereas it's not on the other side. But normally the main blade would be on the top. And it's not, so not sure. The other thing that kind of makes me not sure of which side is the mark side and which is the pile is that this is the main blade that has the etch. Again, though, it's on the bottom, so I'm not sure why, and I'm not sure if that's how other Congress knives are. But to start out here, it has a kind of a modified spear point. Case's version definitely has more of a spear point. GEC has ones that have been even clip points and stuff. But then the other blade on this spring is a pen blade, so just a classic pen blade. These all have really nice snap, as you can hear and see, and they also all have match strike nail nicks. Then on the other side is a sheet foot blade, and one thing that I want to talk about real quick with this is this etch. So it's a very different kind of etch. What it is the blade must have been polished, and then, like all of the blades on this knife, and then it was laser etched everywhere other than the writing. So it actually has a little bit of a texture. If you can hear that, your fingernail kind of catches it, and it's almost a little bit like a file for your fingernail, because it's laser etched in tiny little lines, and you probably won't be able to see it, but there's just a whole bunch of tiny little lines laser etched in. You can see the kind of outline right underneath the nail nick where they stopped that laser etch. So everything other than the writing is laser etched, and the writing is just still polished like the rest of the blades. I think that this knife would look better without that. I don't really like etches in general on knife blades. This one is not going to be polished off unless you take it to sandpaper or a polishing wheel, and even then it's going to be harder than most other etches to take off. I don't really love it, but it's interesting, it's different, it's a different kind of etch, and interestingly enough, this is also a laser etch on the handle of this knife. So that's the main blade on that second spring there, and then the secondary is kind of a modified coping blade. So again, a straight edge. So you have two two blades with belly on the one spring, and then two blades with straight edges on the other. Now, I did drop the kick on the pen blade a little bit because the tip was pretty close to proud. Other than that, though, it's not as bad as I expected. If I open the two secondaries, you'll see that the sheet foot blade, it's not really proud. It is really close to being above the frame, but it's not quite as bad as I expected. I've seen some that sit like way above the frame. On the other side, the spear point blade, it's actually right about the same. So kind of just underneath the frame if you look at it straight on, kind of like that. But, pretty closer than I would like on a single blade knife, or even a jack, like a two-bladed knife, both blades coming out of the same end. But being that it is a multi-bladed knife, and no matter which blade you're using, there will always be three other blades that are closed to kind of cover up those proud tips. It's not really a practical issue like people say about other patterns. Or specifically the Stockman is what I've talked about that on. So it's less frustrating to me, the proud tips, than I expected it to be. With that said, I don't really think that I will, use the funds to buy a case Congress knife. I carried this over a camping weekend, and I did use it, and it was, worked fine and everything. I found that it's a little bit big or a little bit long for the blades. The blades are not very long for the size of the knife overall. But I mean, certainly nothing wrong with it. I think it would be good for if you need to open a lot of boxes, but also like cut your lunch. You could use the straight edge blades to open the boxes, and then cut your lunch with the blades with belly. Between the two, I do think I like the half Congress better. The half Congress is almost just like a pen knife, with this one has a Wharncliffe main and then a pen secondary. The thing with any of these Congresses, the thing with a half Congress though, is that unlike the full Congress, if the blade tips are close to or proud of the handle, when you open up one of the blades, the other blade is not protected by any of the other blades. So, like for example, if I open up the spear point blade, the sheep foot tip is not going to hit your hand because the other blades are protecting it. Whereas if this pen blade was proud of the handle like it was when I got it, then it would catch on your finger. So that's one reason why a full Congress might be better if you also don't like close to or proud tips. But it's an interesting pattern. It's one that I think, depending on the shape of the bolsters and things like that, it can be easier or more difficult to carry and use. And whether you are interested in the kind of intricate build of a 4-blade 2-spring knife, which I am. I think that it's really impressive that they're able to make these 4 blades fit into a 2-spring knife, especially for this price. That's also the reason why I got the Case 5-blade saddle belly, which I have a video on. You can check that out. Or not Case, Rough Rider. And you know, that's one of the values of Rough Rider. Like I said, I got this to see if I liked a full Congress, 2-spring 4-bladed Congress. And you know, I don't regret it. Even though I probably won't get the Case version, I don't regret getting this one because it's not that expensive and I'll be able to carry it and use it. And you know, if somebody really likes it, I can give it to them or something like that. And that's, you know, if you're interested in a certain pattern but can't find a GEC version or don't want to spend the money on that or a Case version, check out a Rough Rider. And you know, you get to see if you like it and if you want to spend the money on a USA made version. And it gives you the opportunity to try out patterns that you might not otherwise, especially with GEC. Actually, these GEC 13s are still available. There are some that are seconds, factory seconds, or they're store models, which are just the same as what everybody else calls seconds. There are still some of those available at dealers, but they'll probably be gone relatively soon. And you know, other GEC models can be tough to find, and you can find a Rough Rider version of that pattern and see if you like it, so you can kind of hunt for the GEC or Case version. So that's my thoughts on this Rough Rider full Congress and black cherry bone. Again, I'm happy with it. I think it's definitely worth the price and an interesting knife, even though I probably won't, you know, continue to buy more expensive Congress knives other than this one. So if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and like it. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. If you want to get notifications for when I post other videos, you can subscribe to my channel. And otherwise, don't forget to go out and do good.